Hello there everyone, and yes, I know in the last movie I said there are too many questions and we cannot answer them right now, but of course there are few fundamental rules that everyone should understand while developing for the Apple, because it's really somewhat little bit complicated and somewhat little bit easy than the others. So what are those most important points and aspects? The first point is the code and the simulation. Now you would be writing a ton of codes and all the time you'll be using just one tool, that is Xcode. Now there are of course dozens of other things, but you will be just using the Xcode to write the native application. Now the coding part is done by the Xcode, but what about the simulation? What is actually the simulation? Now with the Xcode you actually get loaded with a bunch of simulations of the iPhone, iPad and a ton of other things. And with that it comes like iPhone 4, 4S, 5S, but what's the simulation part out here? Now you do not get an actual iPhone, you get a simulated version, means it will work exactly like the same as an iPhone, but it will be just simulated in your computer. Now of course when we run our app, it sometimes is required that we need to test it on a hardware device. But there are a few things like the heating up the devices and all of that. Apart from all the things are going to be out there in the simulated version, like how is the performance going on, what kind of memory it is consuming, how the icon looks like, and a tons of bunch of other things. So all these diagnoses can be done via the simulation, and it's a good thing that we do not need to purchase a whole lot of things and it works really fine. The next thing that you should be worried about is the language and the framework. Of course, the language of our choice is going to be the Swift. There are a tons of Objective-C programmer. They will say that we will strict hard to the Objective-C and not moving on to the Swift yet. They might be right at this point, but sooner and sooner they are going to be extinct out there from the market. Swift is a new thing. It should be followed and you should always be rolling out with the current updates with the Apple. Now there are tons of related frameworks like Cocoa for WatchKit and all of that, which helps you to develop for those particular devices. So whether you are developing for an iPhone or all that, but you should always keep an eye for the watches and the iPads or Cocoa framework for the desktop and all of these things. Now the next thing that you should be worried about is really important. That is HIG. It is also known as Human Interface Guideline. Now go ahead and search for HIG for Apple, and once you type those keywords on the Google, hit on the first page and read out the documentation. It is an intense flow to understand how the human interface works onto a devices. Now when I was in my master degree, I did an intense research on how the interface works, what are the things which affect, and believe me, it's a very rigorous topic and it's a really enthusiastic one. So you need to understand how the people work on the buttons, how the color verifies, or how the process works on, and it is all there in the process of the HIG, what you should be doing and most importantly what you should not be doing, like the transparency works. All of these things are immensely researched by the Apple and is out there, like how is the zooming effect working out, what kind of images you should be working on, are the images going to be 3D or the two-dimensional or just the layout ones, or what are the other things you should be worried about. So it is all about the Human Interface Guideline, a really must read documentation if you are going to submit your app. Now after that we come up to a very important thing, that is ADP, and it is known as the Apple Development Process. Now you might be coming from a web development or maybe starting fresh new. Now let me be aware you that Apple development process is not at all a simple process. It's a pragmatic approach. You need to be really worried about the steps, the rules are out there. It's not about designing a website from scratch. It's just about editing a template. Yes, you can be creative, but everything is defined. Like for example, the zooming look of whenever you tap on an iPhone on any app, or like zooming back whenever you hit the home button. Now every such thing is being undertaken by the Apple rules. So be worried about that, but don't be scared of that. It is not too bad. Like for example, reaction to touch or keeping your application alive when the home button is being hit. There are too much of things that are being taken care by Apple, and they will all work if you will follow all these things. So these things are already baked in, being cooked up in an iPhone application interface. So don't be worried about, but always keep in mind that it is a pragmatic approach. It says Do not reinvent the wheel. Just merge as a programmer. And in fact, as a programmer, we do the same thing. We always try to merge whatever everything is out there. So make sure that you understand that ADP is good for you and you should be worried about that.